Call of Duty, I've played Call of Duty before. I haven't played it in years. Call of Duty is the same game over and over and over. With Call of Duty, it's like you cannot tell the difference between one Call of Duty or not. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Justin. You've seen the thumbnail, you've seen the title. We're going to be unpacking a video called Activision Blizzard lost 47 million active players in the past year in slump despite Diablo Immortal. No more intro, let's just jump into it, see what Yongyea is talking about.
So let's check in on Activision Blizzard, who have not been doing particularly well. They're definitely in something of a slump, even with the launch of Diablo Immortal, which unfortunately did make a lot of money, especially from whales who are either too addicted for their own good, or folks who can afford to spend $100,000 to max out one character, like the one content creator slash streamer did, which I talked about in a previous video, who became so powerful by paying to win that he got locked out of PvP because...
Okay, so obviously I'd heard about this guy, and I watched Asmongold. I think he did 2 videos on this person, and I do want to make a commentary video on some of Asmongold stuff. His stuff is just a little bit too long for me to do a reaction to, but I did like the fact that his chat was not feeling that guy at all. They were like, that's what he gets. And I agree with what Asmongold said in that video, which is like, the guy should still be able to play the game, but at the same time, when you deal with Activision Blizzard, that's what happens.
He can matchmake with anyone at his level. The Activision Blizzard recently hosted their Q2 financial briefing, and this headline kind of sums it up. Activision Blizzard loses millions of players, though they are adding 25% more developers year on year. And further details can be found by scrolling down this IGN article, which provides specific numbers. The monthly active users, categorized as anyone who accesses one of Activision Blizzard games in that time frame, fell from 372 million users at the end of March 2022 to 361 million at the end of June. That is a slump of roughly 11 million we're talking about.
Okay, so here's my thinking about this going in, and it's a relatively short video, so I should be able to make my video somewhat short as well. I wouldn't say I got clickbaited with this title, but when you see something like 40 million active players lost, right? What I kind of come here for is to be like, okay, well, hopefully this will affect their financials in such a way that it will result in Blizzard, you know, becoming a better company, Activision Blizzard becoming a better company for workers and making better video games, and everybody kind of wins in that regard. They make more money. But I mean, what was that number? 361 million. I mean, I suppose from the perspective that companies expect year-over-year growth, profit and revenue to be up than it was before, this is kind of like a win for the common gamer. But that's still so many people that this isn't that big of a deal. And this is sort of, if I do have any criticism on anything that's reported negatively on the gaming industry, it's that I mean, you report on what you can report on, but I kind of wish that it was a big, like if this had been 372 million at the end of March 2022, and then it was like 250 million, I mean, it'd be like, okay, that's a big enough hit to where it's like, it's a big deal, but nah. 47? So far, I'm not convinced.
That is a slump of roughly 11 million we're talking about from last quarter to this quarter. The declining trend only looks worse when you look at data from the past year. As IGN points out, this latest drop in players continues the publisher's downward trend, as the number of monthly active users on June 30th of last year was at 408 million users, and has fallen relatively steadily ever since. So if you do the math by subtracting 408 million by 361 million, that is a drop in players and monthly active users by about 47 million. That is not an insignificant number. That's 41 million users that Activision Blizzard...
I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, to provide... I guess I'm a little more pessimistic than anybody else when it comes to the gaming stuff. I want it to be a bigger number because I want things to change. And I don't think that they're really going to change all that much over a 47 million active player base loss. I will say the steady decline, which was kind of pointed out in that video, is something that I do think matters. And I also think what matters is the constant news coming out about Activision. Now, what we don't know, and I couldn't even begin to formulate how the average gamer's brain works, even though I am an average gamer, is the fact that I would hope and believe that the publicity surrounding Activision Blizzard and what's going on with their company would affect their numbers. People just don't want to do business with them and they don't want to play their games. That's probably not the case. I don't think gamers operate in that way. I think they're too, smooth brain. I just don't think people operate in that way. I think they see Call of Duty, when they see World of Warcraft, when they see whatever the hell else, Diablo, that Activision Blizzard makes, they just get it. And the only thing that I would imagine would prevent them from coming back day over day, month over month to pay the subscriptions or whatever it is that either they finish the content too quickly or it's just not good enough for them to engage with consistently when there's other games to play. So I wish it was more that they're just a bad company and that's why people didn't want to play their games, but I'm pretty sure it's more there's other games to play and people just lose interest and move on to other things.
Isn't engaging enough to monetize. As for what's causing such a slump, well,
Okay.
as IGN points out here, there are a number of circumstances at work, namely that Activision Blizzard just has had a notable quiet release schedule recently. They haven't really been coming out with much, though that could change in the not-so-distant future with Activision working on new Call of Duty entries, with Blizzard working on Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4, which aren't too far off from release, so on and so forth, but we'll see how those games ultimately end up performing when they launch, whether they meet expectations, exceed them, or underwhelm. A lot is certainly riding on those releases, and it seems Activision Blizzard knows it too, as they have been investing in their development teams, with this quote from the financial briefing reading as follows: "Our development headcount at the end of the second quarter grew by 25% year over year." So they're really manning the decks here and kicking development for these games on overdrive so they can launch on time in the hopes that it'll make up for the slump that the company's been seeing as of late. For now, though, this significant loss in their monthly active users has certainly put a dent in their revenue and profits, even with Diablo Immortal's launch. Among Activision Blizzard's divisions, the only one that saw the player base or the monthly active users increase is Blizzard, but only by a bit, and that can be attributed to the launch of Diablo Immortal, which drew in a bunch of new players, given the scale and size of the mobile market and the mobile player base. But as detailed by GamesIndustry.biz here, Diablo Immortal ultimately wasn't enough to offset Activision Blizzard's slump. Diablo Immortal seemed to be off to a good start. It reached $100 million in player spending in 2 months. From a financial standpoint, Diablo Immortal really seemed to be pulling its weight for Activision Blizzard,
Right.
which is why it was more than a little surprising when Activision Blizzard reported its earnings on Monday and Blizzard's revenues were, not great. Now, Blizzard's release schedule last year around the same time.
See, you love to hear it. On one hand, I don't want my channel to just be me posting negative stuff all the time when it comes to video games. But listen, get these scumbags. There is something nice about hearing you made $100 million and it's still wasn't good. Cool. Your ambitions were too high and your game's not that good.
Wasn't particularly packed either. During last year's quarter, they launched Burning Crusade Classic for World of Warcraft, which ended up having more of a positive impact on Activision Blizzard's
Burning
finances
Crusade
than
Classic.
Diablo Immortal did. The company specifically said that Diablo Immortal and Hearthstone's gains were not enough to measure up to the impact of Burning Crusade Classic's launch. So yeah, Diablo Immortal did rake in $100 million in 2 months, but it is still a free-to-play game. They aren't raking in $60 per game purchase, and they're still relying on people being engaged and spending their money on a recurrent basis. And on that front, while Diablo Immortal is performing at a level that's comparable to Pokemon Go's performance, it doesn't change the fact that Activision Blizzard is lacking enough in other areas where Diablo Immortal alone is not going to be enough to make up for losses. Diablo Immortal also couldn't make up for the significant decline in Activision Blizzard's overall active monthly users. Equally concerning were Blizzard's engagement numbers. Blizzard had ended the March quarter, last quarter, with just 22 million monthly active users.
I always just assumed it was operating costs versus what you make, right? So if you were spending, and this is going to be super layman, but my idea, my thinking was, if you were just spending $10 million a year in operating costs across whatever it takes to get your company to run and to get your games out to the public, but then you made $22 million in that year, obviously it would be a plus. Then on top of that, if next year you were operating at the same costs or slightly above. So let's say first year you've got 10 million. Let's say second year you're 15 million. If you make 22 million the first year and then 25 million the second year, and it's on, par with whatever your projections were, then my thinking would be you are in the positive, you're in the green, So what I don't think I'm getting from this, and I know it's obviously talking about active players and subscribers and things like that, but what I'm kind of missing is how much is Blizzard operating at? Like, how much are they spending, and then how much are they making? Because at least what this looks like to me is that their operating costs are always going to be significantly lower than what they're making, but they're not making as much as they want to make. And so because they're not making as much as they want to make, it's considered like unsuccessful or a failure.
The lowest since the company began reporting that figure in 2016, and this is specifically the Blizzard division of Activision Blizzard King. Diablo Immortal did expand the user base. More than half of the game's players were new to Blizzard, and overall monthly active users were up, but not impressively. Remember that last article I showed you where it said that Blizzard is the only branch of the company to see an increase in players? Well, that's not really something to flaunt because the increase really isn't by much. Blizzard's monthly active users for last quarter, boosted by Diablo Immortal's launch, was sitting at 27 million, but compared to last year, that's just an increase of 1 million players roughly. Looking at the previous year's June quarter, that player base was sitting at 26 million. So Diablo Immortal helped the monthly active users reach numbers that are comparable to last year, but it hasn't boosted it past that on a significant level. While Diablo Immortal's financial performance is relatively considered to be a success, it's not so much so that it makes up for other shortcomings. Diablo Immortal not only failed to boost revenues, but barely made up for the last year's worth of declining engagement.
See, that's what's catching me, right? Not only failed to boost revenues, okay, solid point, but barely made up for last year's worth of declining engagement. So is that what Blizzard cares about more, the engagement? I just assumed that the classic business thing was money. So if you just had a sentence that said, this is a brand new big time free-to-play mobile game success, and it not only, well, I guess if you said, and it failed to boost revenue, boom, period, end of sentence. If you had that, then it'd be like, oh wow, well, despite all the people, like that idiot that was paying however much he paid. What was it? Something stupid. Ugh. But that guy paying that money to Blizzard, he didn't make up for, I guess, the projections. So again, I kind of I'm leaning on the idea that the projections might just be, I wouldn't say too high, but they have it really high. Like maybe they're saying we want to have 50 million active players. And so when they get 26 million, it's like, that would be a failure.
And for Blizzard. Now, games industry does point out some of the games we're going to see from Activision Blizzard throughout the rest of the year. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which is likely going to sell pretty well. Call of Duty Warzone 2.0, Overwatch 2, World of Warcraft Dragonflight, and World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King Classic. How those games will perform remains to be seen, though on some level I do agree with games industry when they say that while these are big names on paper, I could see any or all of them underperforming to a degree. Modern Warfare 2 is bound to sell well, but will it topple the previous Modern Warfare release that was, I think, the biggest Call of Duty release ever? Call of Duty Warzone 2.0, that was hot once upon a time, but its popularity has waned. Will this 2.0 release be enough to revitalize the interest surrounding that version of Call of Duty? And will Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 and Call of Duty Warzone 2.0 being in such close proximity negatively impact those games, given that they kind of seem to be in competition of each other? Overwatch 2 hasn't been getting a whole lot of fanfare because a lot of people see it as sort of a 1.5 update, and so that's been getting a lot of mixed feedback, and Overwatch 2 just doesn't feel as shiny as Overwatch 1 did when that first came out. And then there are the World of Warcraft expansions. World of Warcraft also has been in something of a slump. It's no longer considered to be the top MMORPG. That crown now belongs to Final Fantasy XIV. So many people have kind of migrated from World of Warcraft to FF14. People have just not been happy with how developers have been handling World of Warcraft in general. The Activision Blizzard workplace controversy stuff has also kind of dissuaded people from engaging with Activision Blizzard games as much. So yeah, I agree that these game releases, despite being big names, do have a chance of not living up to Activision Blizzard's expectations of them, but they are likely to at least make up for some of the slump that Activision Blizzard is
it just
seeing
depends
right
on what
now,
their
in large part because
expectations
they just
are.
haven't had a consistent slate of releases. Now, another major contributing factor to Activision Blizzard's financial and monthly active user slump is Call of Duty's underperformance, specifically where Call of Duty Vanguard is concerned. Stephen Totillo here raised the question, could Call of Duty Vanguard's underperformance explain much of the industry's current slump? Well, here's Activision's just announced Q2 revenue compared to last year's $1.6 billion in 2022.
Okay, so this is what I was kind of talking about earlier, and I'm sure that Yongyea is going to get to it. But this is sort of what I was talking about. It's like, that's still such a large amount of money, but this is the power of any consumer, really. And I'm not going to try to dwell on this point too long, but this is the power of any consumer. It's that these companies oftentimes want year over year growth. They want to know that they're making more, and not even just revenue and profits, right? I guess in another metric, it could be engagement, hours played or whatever the case is. They want to know that those numbers are going up so they can then pitch that to investors and whatnot, shareholders. But if you do see a decline, even though it's such a large number, 1.6 billion, it sounds weird to say it this way, but that's actually kind of like a win for us, the normal people, because it means that whether or not you're connected to gaming news or not, there's enough people that have just decided to not engage with this, that it's affected, Activision Blizzard in this way.
Versus $2.3 billion in 2021.
And that's really surprising too, because I think people who play Call of Duty are just brain dead. So it's kind of surprising that they just don't buy the same game over and over.
Stephen Totillo's Axios article titled "Activision Quarterly Earnings Show Call of Duty's Vulnerability," particularly referring to the fact that the Activision division of Activision Blizzard is all kind of Call of Duty at this point.
Yeah.
Put all of their eggs in the Call of Duty
That's
basket.
all they've
all
been.
Of the developers under the Activision umbrella are all essentially cycling through Call of Duty development cycles. And when a release like Call of Duty Vanguard comes out that ends up woefully underwhelming, both in critical reception and commercial performance, then you get a situation where Activision Blizzard as a whole suffers tremendously because they're so reliant on Call of Duty succeeding. The publisher announced financial results for the spring quarter that were significantly lower than those of spring 2021, and the blame is squarely on Call of Duty. Within the
it's blamed on the only thing that they got. So of course.
Activision Blizzard King conglomerate, Activision contributed most to the drop in spring of 2022. A decline in operating income by $271 million compared to last spring. Blizzard dropped less, and King actually grew. Stephen Totillo makes it a point to note here that we can all equate Activision in any of these results with Call of Duty, as these days Activision's large studios consisting of more than 3,000 developers make Call of Duty content year-round. And so when Vanguard fails, you get a situation where way fewer people are playing Call of Duty or spending money on Call of Duty this year. Way fewer, 33 million fewer. And with the Activision division specifically not diversifying their portfolio, when Call of Duty fails, Activision as a whole fails and ends up in this kind of slump. And Blizzard's launch of Diablo Immortal wasn't
something else I'm going to jump in and say, it's also low effort. It's like complacency as well, right? It's a matter of, and we see this with games like the sports games like, FIFA or Madden. It's about, well, here's our metrics for this game. How can we put in less money on the operating side, but then get more money on the revenue side? And it's one of the reasons why you get a lot of copy and paste situations. It's reusing assets. It's like, changing the roster, whatever it is. Call of Duty, I've played Call of Duty before. I haven't played it in years. Call of Duty is the same game over and over and over. It's kind of funny because I remember someone mentioning to me once when I was talking about Assassin's Creed years ago, and they were like, Assassin's Creed is just the same game over and over. You just run and climb on stuff. And listen, I'm not as into Assassin's Creed now as I was then, but at the very least, yeah, sure, there's hidden blade stuff. Assassinations are very similar. The models move, quite similar, especially during the older Assassin's Creed games. But at the very, you'd have a hard time making an argument with me regarding the similarity between like Assassin's Creed 1 and 2, or 2 and 3, or 3 and Unity. It's just, they're different. If nothing else, they operate in a different space. With Call of Duty, it's like you cannot tell the difference between one Call of Duty or not. If you took somebody that knew what Call of Duty was and you showed them like the third Call of Duty game and then like the second to most recent Call of Duty game, and you were like, where do these take place, or are these the same game? No one can tell you. I mean, and that's why I also find it interesting that these games don't, do well, or that they're not doing well now in the past 2 years, because I mean, these Call of Duty players just play the same shit over and over. They literally play the same game. So if they're not playing it now, maybe they just moved on to something else. I really doubt it's that the game's just not engaging
enough to make up for that, and King growing in its operating income compared to the other divisions also wasn't enough to make up for that. With Vanguard specifically, it sold millions, but much fewer millions than its predecessors. It disappointed fans who then bailed on it, and the once hot Warzone has cooled. Only time will tell how much Activision Blizzard's upcoming releases, from Call of Duty to Overwatch to Diablo, will help revitalize interest surrounding participation in Activision Blizzard games. But with all said and done, Activision Blizzard doesn't have much to worry about because they are getting purchased by Microsoft. And while Microsoft has said in the past that for the most part they're not going to interfere too much with Activision Blizzard's operations, hopefully they can still ultimately contribute to better leadership across the board for a publishing company and a conglomerate that has really fallen by the wayside as of late, both in their financial performance and the monthly active users, but also the quality of games that they release, which is what largely contributes to people not being as interested in their games as they once used to be. Hopefully that'll change with their upcoming releases, but we'll see what happens.
I mean, neutral take on it as always from Yongyea, and I appreciate that. It's one of the reasons I like watching his content. Ultimately, I mean, I think my stance is I'm going to pick a side and say I hope they burn. I mean, I'm not an Activision Blizzard fan in any capacity. I will never play any of their games, and the only real upside I ever see is that I hope things get so bad for them they do a complete overhaul. Unfortunately, people will lose their jobs in that process, as it tends to happen in these situations. But what I kind of hope for the super long term is that their numbers keep declining in such a way that they have to massively change the way that they do things. And if that happens to be through, like I said, like he was saying, something like a purchase through Microsoft, maybe Microsoft doesn't do anything now. But I think when you see those kind of acquisitions, I mean, that's what kind of happened with Blizzard and Activision, right? When you see those sort of things happen, even though a company might say, we're not going to change anything, we're going to let them do what they want, then why the hell did you buy them? No, you're going to get your fingers in there in some capacity. So anyway, that's it for me. I thought it was a good video. Check out my other content because I got videos dropping pretty much every other day. All right, I'm out here. Peace.